Prudence, what are we going to do today? So, myself and technician Prudence over there are going to show you how to work on your Whirlpool Cabrio washer. And let's face it, if you own one of these, you're probably going to need to do something similar like this because, unfortunately, these are kind of junk. At least the electronics portion of it. When they were brand new, they were great washers, but over time, they tend to fail, and specifically the problem is the control board. So yes, you can do this fancy deal and put it in this diagnostic feature, which will give you a code. It'll give you a sequence with lights, and you can count that and get a certain type of code and look online. Even though it gives you a specific code, there could be another underlying issue. And kind of put it in perspective, if you were to replace the control board by buying a refurbished one, it's like $120, $130, and then God forbid you pony up the money to buy a brand new one and you're looking at $150 plus. So, is this washer worth that much to replace just the control board? Absolutely not, but clearly that's your decision. But anyways, what I propose is to replace a certain part on the control board, but first we need to get to that. So this is part one, and well, I'll quit rambling and let's dig into it. So you may be asking, what are the tools required? For starters, you will want some adjustable pliers like such to remove the water feed lines. Next up, potentially a flathead screwdriver or even a 6.5mm socket with a ratchet. Now, some of the screws, or I should say most of them, you can actually just use a flathead like such, but some of them you can't get away with it. It's not a notch. Now, this is a used washer, so somebody may have replaced these, so yours may be different, but don't be surprised if some have the slot for a flathead, and if some you have to use the 6.5mm socket. So for me, to be a little simpler, I'm actually using my Ryobi, well, a really dirty Ryobi impact gun, but it's absolutely not required. The screws are very short, so you can easily and quickly remove them with a ratchet. Outside of that, just a small magnetic tray. Obviously, this is not a requirement, but because you are dealing with a ton of tiny little screws, just throwing them in here really simplifies it so you don't lose them. Lastly, a little bit of intelligence goes a very long way. Because you are dealing with 220 volt power here, you obviously want to unplug that, but be careful. You are dealing with metal, electrical, and water, so please do yourself a favor and please be careful. So for starters, unplug the power, shut off the water supplies, remove the drain feed, get a bucket handy, grab your pliers, undo the connections, and prepare for water to come out. That's obviously what the bucket's for. Repeat the process on the opposite line. So with the water lines removed from the actual spigots, now we will remove them from the back of the washer. And this is kind of what you're left with, a whole plethora of these little screws. So because there's so many of them, that's why I am choosing to use an impact gun. So 5 bolts, and you have this panel removed. So now you actually have access to the back side of the control board. But unfortunately, you're not able to remove it just quite yet. we need to remove a few more screws. These two right here, these two right here. You'll also want to remove this one to remove this plate cover, and then there's some clips here, but then once we get to that point, we should be able to shift this whole top piece up. There's a goofy looking bracket right there, 2 screws, and that's removed. That second bracket with those 2 screws removed. This panel twists out like such. Quite honestly, you may not need to remove that, but just 1 screw and loosens up the wires a little bit. Next up, we're going to try to remove some of these connectors just to kind of loosen everything up here. So we have this one right here. Just that, they call it a rosebud connector, that comes out. There's 2 tabs, one right there, faces like that. Push those 2 tabs in, wiggle that out, frees up some space there. Then this tube, that just pops off like such. Another rosebud connector right there. Just take your flathead screwdriver, pop that up. This one right there. There's no tab. This one just wiggles out. Set it to the side like such. I believe that's the main power feed to the control board. Another connector with 2 tabs at the bottom, one right there, push those in, wiggle it, that pops out like such. Hopefully you're able to see some of this. This long connector, tab at the bottom, right there, push that in, same thing, wiggle that out. This bottom one is a little trickier to get to, but the tabs are at the top. Go, tab right there, push down, wiggle, that is removed. And then we are left, I believe, with 1 more electrical connector. And this one, I believe we can wait a minute to remove. So now we need to focus on removing this top piece to shift it up to get access to all the bolts to remove this out. So there are some tough ones to get at in this corner, and you're just not going to be able to really get at it even with a wrench. So let's focus on getting this top piece off so we can shift it up and get access to those bolts. Okay, so inside there in the center is a metal clip. And we need to push that metal clip towards us, so towards the back here, and then push it upwards. So I'm going to try as best as physically possible to capture this on the camera. So there you have it. There is where the control board tower here, this top piece, was sitting in. And here is a different look at that clip. But basically, pushes inwards like such, and that's how you pop it out, and then you push this side forward, and same thing goes for this side. the last remaining electrical connector that I decided to wait till we swung this out because it's a little tricky to get at because this guy pushes forward and then wiggles out like such. Now with this connector removed, we can go ahead and pry up. There's a tab right here that this plastic piece is in. That lifts up, and then the rest can kind of wiggle out. Set that to the side, and believe it or not, out of all these other screws here, the important one is right here. And shifts to the side like such. Here is the control board slid to the side. Actually lifts right out of this plastic base plate. No screws, no clips. And here's what you're looking at. Like any motherboard, there's a bunch of soldering joints, there's some relays, capacitors, a lot to go wrong. So if you're looking at a replacement, well, I'm not going to dive too far into that because guess what? I do have a part 2 to what potentially could be wrong with your current control board. Or if you're looking at just a replacement, well, you'll get one of these, or you will get it all together with this panel. But honestly, I don't really recommend just replacing that because, like I mentioned, 100 to 150 bucks, whereas it could be something as simple as a small capacitor. So be sure to watch that part 2 to see if you can fix your current broken control board for $2 or less. So at this point, we're going to assume that you have your replacement, or if you were smart, you actually fix what you currently have. You didn't shell out too much money, and we're going to throw that fixed control board back into place and get your washer working just like new. So let's go ahead and put this all back together. So when you go to put this top piece back in, you have to slide this tab and this tab into the rectangular slots. It'll be angled backwards, and then you just press down and it's locked in there. Obviously, this section right here is still loose because you have these two plates not connected, so this will still move about. Now with it all back together, it's time to plug it in. And of course, don't forget to turn on the water supplies. So, we'll see what happens, and I'll check back here in a few. There you have it. Worked like a charm. So hopefully this video was helpful in showing you how to get access to that control board if you have a serious malfunction that you need to replace, or in my part 2 video that you should have watched by now, show you how to fix that control board. Appreciate you watching. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if it helped you out, and be sure to subscribe because I do have other repair videos, mainly car stuff, but I do have plenty other content. So like always, I appreciate you watching. Catch you guys next time.